Thank you for tuning in. In this video, we're going to be looking at how to create and submit a basic Nomad job, configure memory limit for the tasks in that job, set up a template for that task, run multiple instances of the task, and finally, configure the task through environment variables. Welcome to DevOps Generation. I'm your host, David Lublink. Before we get started, we're going to look at what you need to follow along. You're going to need a text editor. You're going to need a functional Nomad setup, whether it's in a standalone or cluster mode. You're going to need support for the Docker driver on that cluster, and finally access to that cluster's web UI. In this video, we are using Nomad 1.9.2. So go ahead and open up a blank file and call it whatever you want and give it the extension .nomad. Now that you've done that, let's go ahead and fill out the files. So we're going to start by defining the job, and our job is going to be the first job we write. Okay, and we put brace brackets, and then we go straight to our task and say my task. And then in order to do work, we need to tell Nomad, well, which driver are we using? Now, in this video, we'll be using Docker. There are others available, including Java, some Windows stuff, and virtual machines. But we're going to be concentrating on Docker. So we say that the driver we want is Docker. And if you're familiar with Docker, the first thing you need to know about Docker is the image. So let's set up a configuration stanza and say that the image is going to be this image I have prepared beforehand called pretend work, which is going to pretend to do work for us. And so this is now a fully valid and complete Nomad job. So let's go and run it. Just before we run it, let me show you real quick what's in this Docker image so you can know what to expect. We have 3 random values generated, and with those 3 random values, we have the message processed X units of work across Y things, sleep for Z. And if the file exists, output it, and in our case it doesn't, so let's run this. Now, this particular image is quite small. It's only about 6.5 megabytes. 6 megabytes, I'm sorry. And so it was quite quick downloading. Sometimes when working with bigger images, sometimes you have to be a little bit more patient. It can take a little bit more time to download. You can see it says it downloaded it and it started it. And so let's go look at logs. And it's running. It's processed 253 units across 617 things, and you can see it's sleeping at random intervals, and all these are random numbers. And there we have it. We have our basic job done. Now, you'll notice when I explored this in the UI, I have here, I click, it says groups. And then from here, it talks about allocations, and I click on here, and then I have a task. And so what are tasks, groups, and allocations? Well, if you look at what we did here in our first job, we only mentioned a task. We didn't mention a group. So even though we didn't mention a group, Nomad just assumes there is one. So what we wrote here is actually equivalent to saying group my task with the closing brace bracket down here somewhere, and everything else indented slightly more. So if I copy this in, it should give me a message saying that nothing has actually changed because it assumed how the group would work. Now with groups, I can easily duplicate the groups and have more groups running, more tasks, but since these are identical, these two, there's not much point in doing it this way. In fact, if I wanted to, I could say here count is equal to 10, and it's going to run 10 instances of this task. So I say run, and you can see suddenly, whoa, a whole bunch of them are now running. If we look at the created date, you can see that this one has been there for almost 2 minutes, and the rest of these were all created at about the same time, just moments ago. Now, when you start scaling out, you think, okay, so each of these 10 allocations are taking how much memory? 300 megabytes, but in fact my service is only using 500 kilobytes. Maybe we could, reduce our usage. So we can go, and inside of the my task stanza, we're going to create a new stanza called resources, and we're going to say the CPU, we're going to leave it at the default of 100, and the memory, which is currently at 300, we're going to reduce this to 3 megabytes. Now, of course, this is actually going to fail because Nomad doesn't want you to have anything that is less than 10 megabytes. So we're going to go back and we're going to fix this and say 10 megabytes and run it. And now you see it's going to work through these one at a time, and it's going to it's going to stop an allocation, create a new allocation with the reduced memory, and once that's up and healthy, it's going to go and do another one. So if we watch this here, it's going to take a few minutes because it's only doing one at a time. Now, if I were to decrease the number of allocations running, or I were to change some settings on my job, I could make this run faster, but I'm just going to say, you know what, everything is gone, and just keep one single instance that I guess is called version 3. So let's go to group, status running, and you can see one of these is going to be listed as version 3. There we go. Oh, there we go. That was fast. And now we're back to just one instance. Now the last two pieces we want to look at are going to be templates and the environment. Now, why would we want to set a template? Well, in this case, we're going to be using a very simple case, is that I want to put a file in /local myfile.txt, so it'll be outputted instead of getting an error message on my job. So when we do a template, the template has to be within the task stanza. So I say template, and there's two things we want that are data and the destination. So the destination we know is local /myfile.txt. Now you'll notice I didn't put a slash here, and I'm using this folder local. Whenever you're writing templates, you should be writing it in local or secrets, depending on whether or not there's any secrets in the content. And by secrets, private keys, passwords, etc. And so local and secrets are two special folders that are created by Nomad, and they're the only place you can write to with templates. If you try and write anywhere else, your files are going to kind of get lost. So you write to local, no slash at the beginning, and that will become /local my file, because this is relative to the root of our container that is going to be deployed. Now we want to go back to data and say two less thans followed by 3 letters, on a series of letters, and then the same series of letters at the end. And it's important that whatever you put here, it's just letters all together. Convention is usually 3 to 5, trying to say what it is. You might say, well, this is a text file, so I'm going to call it txt. What's the important thing is to make sure that between your opening txt, your opening tag, and your closing tag, it is impossible for the content to contain your code by itself on a line. Alright, and so we're going to go in here and say this is my text. We're going to copy this. We're going to drop it in Nomad, and Nomad, so we forgot to reduce the count here, so let's try that again. I don't want to have 10 of these. And so we say plus and minus because this is an existing job, we're changing. Plus and minus because this is an existing group, we're changing. And you see we have to destroy the existing instance and recreate it and create a new one. And then finally we see that a template has been added called local myfile. There's some text here. You'll notice that my new lines have disappeared. That's just how it's rendered in this view. And then a bunch of settings that are defaults that I didn't set. I hit run. And you can see that while we wait for version 3, well, it says it's pending version 4, but we have to wait for the old version 3 to stop first, because that's the default deploy upgrade strategy. So I can click on here, I'm looking at the allocation, I'm clicking on my task, I'm going into logs, and now I can see that, oh, this is my text has appeared, and you can see processed to 500 of 305 things. And so if I were to come here, this is my extended text. Now this is a change to the job, this is a change to the template, which means that even though it's a very minor change, I still have to restart everything. So we destroy the existing instance and we create a new instance. We run it. I keep saying instance, I should be saying allocation. And you can see same thing again, we're waiting for 4 to shut down, and as soon as 4 shuts down, 5 can whoop, and it's up and running. That was fast. It's a small image, so things can go quickly. Process 300, oh, and this is my extended text. Look at that. Last thing we want to look at in this video is setting environment variables using the env stanza. Now there's more than one way to set an environment variable in Nomad. Let's just talk about this one for today. And so what we're doing here is we've typed env, we've put in our brace brackets to open and close our stanza, and then we simply put the name of the variable we want to set. Max sleep is equal to 4, max unit is equal to 100, and max work is equal to 3. Now these three variables you can see on the left, this is from the image that we've been using for testing since the beginning of the video. We're going to copy this, and you can see it's 355, 876, it's always 0 to 1000. Running this, we can see, whoops, environment variables have appeared. We say, yep, I accept. And you can see there's nothing happening here because we were still waiting for the other task to exit. Now that it's exited, we are ready to go. I hit logs, and you can see that now we are limited by the environment variables we've just set. Now I can change these variables. Every time you change environment variables, the software has to restart. So just keep that in mind. So here we can say we're restarting. And here we can see it started. We're using half a megabyte out of 10 megabytes total. You go into logs and you can see, oops, suddenly this number is much bigger and this one is unchanged because that's literally what we just changed here. Now, if we combine this with this count here, I can say I have 10 instances, I can have 10 allocations running. Let's hit run, plan, and here suddenly I create 9 new ones, but they're all configured exactly the same way. If you were to have this group there twice, obviously you're going to have a different name. This one also has 10 tasks, except with this one, the max work is going to be 30 and the max unit is going to be 100,000. We can run this, hit jobs, paste, plan, and see suddenly we're creating 10 new allocations. And if we go look at these allocations of my task 2, view logs, you can see big number on the left. And if I go to all allocations and look at one of these ones here from the older one, you can see it's a big number on the right. So I have the same Docker image running with different parameters just via the environment variables. Alright, so what have we learned? Well, we've built out a basic Nomad job. We have our job, a group. We can control the number of allocations that run at the same time. In our case, we have 10 here. By default, it's 1, and if you put nothing, it's the same as saying count is equal to 1. We learned that we can set a task with driver equals Docker. The image, we set environment variables. We set how many resources this allocation will get, and finally we set a template. Maybe one last note is if you are dealing with Docker containers that are not public, you may need to set up an auth stanza within your configuration. here with the username and password for that repository. Alright, well that's all for this video. Thank you for listening, and please leave your questions, comments below. Look to the description to find a link to all the code included in this video, as well as a link to a blog post where this entire content will be in written form. And finally, don't forget to subscribe and like if you enjoyed this video. Have a good day.